The Silver Line Diner was full that afternoon. People were laughing, spoons were clinking, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. But then, crash! A loud, shattering sound cut through everything. A glass had hit the floor. Everyone turned. Near the counter stood a tall man in a dark suit, Victor Hale, the powerful CEO whose face was always in newspapers. And beside him, her hands shaking, stood Elena, a young waitress in a simple blue uniform. Victor's voice was sharp and full of anger. "You ruined my shirt!" he shouted, his words echoing through the diner. Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered, trying to clean the mess. But Victor grabbed her arm roughly, making her flinch. People froze. No one moved. The laughter died. The sound of the broken glass seemed louder than before, and in that silence, something darker was about to begin. Before we move forward, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? And don't forget to like and subscribe to Black and Wronged for more heart-touching stories. Let's get started. Elena tried to pull her arm away, but Victor's grip only grew tighter. His gold watch sparkled under the lights, but his eyes were cold. Everyone could see what was happening, yet no one stood up. A woman at the counter looked down at her coffee. A man in the corner pretended to read his newspaper. The room was filled with fear and silence, the kind that makes people forget what is right. Victor leaned closer and whispered something that made Elena's face go pale. Her hand went to her stomach. She was pregnant. Her breath came fast, her voice shaking. "Please don't," she said softly. But Victor didn't care. He raised his hand as if to strike her again. The whole diner watched, hearts pounding, yet nobody moved. And then, the sound of engines rolled in from outside. Faint at first, growing louder, closer. Something or someone was coming. The moment Victor lifted his hand, the diner's glass door suddenly rattled. The roar of motorcycle engines grew louder, echoing through the street. Every head turned. The bell above the door jingled once, twice, and then stopped. 5 men stepped inside, and boots heavy, eyes sharp, the air shifting as they entered. The smell of motor oil and wind followed them. Their leather vests carried the name Hell's Angels, a name that made even the boldest men step back. Victor froze for a moment, but then laughed coldly. "This isn't your business," he snapped. But the men didn't answer. They just kept walking, slow and steady, their eyes fixed on him. Elena looked up through her tears, confused but hopeful. One of the bikers glanced at her, his face calm but strong, like someone who had seen darkness before and refused to let it win again. The diner went silent. Everyone could feel it. Something powerful was about to happen. Would these strangers really stand up against a billionaire? Right here in front of everyone? As the dinner rush slowed down, Harlan quietly placed a cup of chamomile tea on Table 6, Maria Santos's favorite. No one had ever told her what Maria liked. She just knew. Every evening at the same time, she'd do it. But that night, something unusual happened. Maria looked up from her meal and asked softly, "Do I know you?" Harlan froze. Her heart pounded. She wanted to speak but couldn't. The truth was buried deep, in a letter she kept hidden inside her apron pocket. A letter she'd written to Maria, but never had the courage to give. And just when she thought she could walk away quietly, Maria stood up. "Wait," she said. "Why do your eyes look so familiar?" Harlan's fingers trembled as Maria's question echoed in her mind. She looked down, trying to hide her shaking hands. But the folded paper inside her apron felt heavier than ever. That letter wasn't just a note, it was her truth. The one she'd written months ago, after finding out something that changed everything. It said, "Dear Mrs. Santos, I'm sorry for keeping this from you. Your son Malik wasn't just my friend. He was my brother." Maria's eyes softened as she noticed the outline of the paper sticking out. "What's that in your pocket?" she asked quietly. The entire diner seemed to fade into silence. Forks paused midair. Even the clock on the wall felt like it stopped ticking. Would Harlan finally hand over the letter, or keep her secret buried forever? Harlan took a deep breath. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Slowly, she pulled the letter out and placed it on the table beside Maria's untouched coffee. Maria looked down at it, her fingers trembling slightly. "You wrote this?" she asked. "Yes," Harlan whispered. "I didn't know how to tell you before. Malik wasn't just someone who worked here. He was my brother. He died 2 years ago and Her voice cracked. "I kept working here because this place reminded me of him." For the first time, Maria didn't look like the cold billionaire everyone feared. Her eyes glistened. My son. He used to talk about a girl named Harlan, she said softly. He said she was the only one who ever understood him. The whole diner watched in silence, not daring to breathe. Then Maria reached out, her voice breaking. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Harlan's reply was barely a whisper. Because I thought you'd fire me. Maria Santos stood there, frozen for a moment. Then something in her expression softened, the walls she'd built around. Herself began to crumble. Slowly, she stood up from table 6 and walked toward Harlan. Every pair of eyes in the Aurelia Hotel diner followed her. The air was thick with tension. Even the sound of the rain outside seemed to fade. Maria stopped right in front of Harlan and whispered, I'm sorry. Harlan blinked, not believing what she'd just heard. Billionaires didn't say sorry. Not to waitresses. Maria's voice shook as she continued. I took my anger out on you because I never healed from losing my son. But seeing your kindness, it reminded me of what I lost. Harlan's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to speak, but her throat tightened. Then Maria did something no one expected. She hugged Harlan. Right there in front of everyone. Gasps filled the diner. Even Henderson, Maria's elderly mother, wiped away a tear and smiled proudly. But before anyone could react further, the door to the diner opened, and a familiar figure stepped in. The bell above the diner door jingled softly as the stranger stepped in. His coat was dripping from the rain, and his face was hidden beneath a dark hat. Everyone turned to look, the tension returning like a slow-moving storm. Harlan's heart skipped a beat. There was something about the man's presence, calm yet commanding. He looked straight at Maria Santos, and for a moment, her confident mask broke again. The man removed his hat. Mrs. Santos, he said quietly, you don't remember me, do you? Maria's eyes widened. Henderson leaned forward in her chair, squinting. I know that voice, Maria whispered. The man sighed, looking at Harlan briefly, then back to Maria. I was the driver that night your son's car went off the bridge, he said, and I've been searching for you ever since, not for forgiveness, but to tell you what really happened. A sharp silence filled the diner. Forks froze mid-air. Even the rain seemed to pause. Maria's trembling hand clutched the table. What do you mean? What really happened? The man's voice lowered, almost breaking. Your son wasn't alone that night. Maria's breath caught in her throat. The diner was completely silent, all eyes on the unfolding moment. Harlan stepped closer, unsure what would happen next. The stranger continued. Malik wasn't alone. And because of what happened that night, lives were changed. I've carried this truth for years, waiting for the right moment to tell you. Maria's hands shook as tears streamed down her face. For the first time, the walls of anger, guilt, and grief crumbled. She looked at Harlan, then at Henderson, and finally at the stranger. Slowly, she nodded. I understand now, she whispered. Thank you for telling me. I can finally begin to heal. Harlan smiled softly, feeling the weight of months lift off her shoulders. The diner, once tense and heavy with secrets, now felt light, like the first warm sun after a long storm. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight streamed in through the windows. The patrons whispered quietly, some wiping tears from their eyes. And as Maria embraced Harlan one last time, the moral was clear: courage, honesty, and kindness can heal even the deepest wounds. If this story touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Black and Wronged. Comment below. What would you have done if you were in that diner? Remember, even small acts of courage can change someone's life forever.